Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is
Harry!
And we're at the Burlington County Historical Society and
Children's History Center!
And today we're in New Lisbon in Pemberton Township, and we're at the home that's called Fenwick Manor. Today is the Pinelands Commission in New Jersey, but this is where Elizabeth White grew up. This is where her father was living. He had a extensive set of cranberry bogs a few miles from here at White's Bog. And what is Elizabeth White famous for?
She's famous for developing the modern-day blueberry.
That is correct, Harry. Yes, she did. She helped develop that with the help of a U.S. Department of Agriculture scientist named Dr. Frederick Coville, and they worked for a few years on that and had the first commercial crop ever of blueberries in 1916. Now, the blueberry farm and cranberry farming was done in White's Bog a few miles from here, and we're going to go there right now. And now we're at the village called White's Bog that was founded by Elizabeth's father, J.J. White, to grow what fruit, Harry?
Cranberries!
Cranberries! And it's called White's Bog. Why do you think it's called White's Bog? It also was known as White's Bogs. So why do you think it was called that?
Because they grew cranberries here, and cranberries grow in bogs.
Right, but I was thinking, why White's Bog?
Because their last name was White.
And it was their bogs.
Yeah.
There you go. That's right, Harry. And cranberries are very important to this place. Why J.J. White wrote the book. It was the first book on New Jersey cranberry growing in 1870. He wrote it. It's right here. But his daughter did something equally important, and that was, as we were saying, developing what fruit?
Blueberries!
Blueberries! And they're both related. They're in the same genus, Vaccinium, the same genus, and they grow in the same kind of sandy soil you have in the pine barrens here. It has acid in it, and they like that. It has a certain fungus in it, and both plants like that. And she thought if they were growing cranberries already, maybe they could grow blueberries. She read some articles by a botanist from the government named Dr. Fred Coville, and Dr. Coville wrote an article in National Geographic. He wrote some other papers, and she got in touch with him, got him here, and they started the first operation where they bred blueberries. They came up with different types for the first time, and in a few years, in 1916, the first commercial crop was produced right here in White's Bog. Now, Harry, let's go and look at the house she had built on the property.
Okay.
Okay, Harry, now we're at her house, Elizabeth White's house called Sun and Give, and it was built in 1923 by her to be right in the middle of what was going on in White's Bog. She could be involved very closely with the blueberry plants that she was dealing with. They're very close to the house. Also, there was something that she could see out her back windows. What would that be, Harry?
She could see the cranberry bogs.
She could. And she didn't just live here. The whole downstairs floor is offices for the cranberry and blueberry company, where she would have her desk and do her paperwork and management. And also, there was an infirmary. She had some nursing background, and she had an infirmary right here that you could enter from a side door of the house if you were injured in the field or that sort of thing. Now, Harry, I said there are blueberry plants close to the house. You want to see them?
Yeah.
Let's go. So right now, we're in a test field, a very early test field of Elizabeth White and Dr. Fred Coville, and they were working here very hard, and these are some of the original plant varieties that they put in. These plants right here are over 100 years old.
Wow.
Now, you probably wonder why there's no berries or leaves on these plants.
Yeah.
Well, Harry, there will be very soon.
There will?
But it's March, and we've just gotten rid of the snow and hopefully most of the cold weather. When it gets a little warmer, they will have leaves, and they will start to get berries. And some of these will get ripe in June and July. And then they'll look very, very different. Now we're in Bordentown on the site that's connected with another woman important in New Jersey history. And her name, Harry, is what?
Clara Barton.
Clara Barton, that's right. And since this is a one-room schoolhouse, what do you think she did?
She was a teacher.
She was a teacher. In fact, she started Bordentown's public school system, free public school system for the first time, one of the first in the state. And this one-room schoolhouse is where she started in 1852. She came from North Oxford, Massachusetts. She was born there. She studied in a number of places. One of her schoolmates, Mary Norton, lived in New Jersey, and her friend and her went to their home. She was living there for a little while, and there was a nearby school just outside of Hightstown, and she taught there for a while, but she heard about Bordentown, and she knew they needed a school system. There were children that were not going to school. You had to pay to go to school in those days, and she wanted to be able to educate those children. So this was where the school started. It was the one-room school, the old one-room school that was already here. It was dilapidated, and she helped fix it up and make a school. There were only about 6 children at the beginning. Turned out to be 600, not all in this building. There were some other buildings involved eventually, and for 2 years she started a whole school system here. Unfortunately, because she was a woman, they replaced her with a male principal, and she left. She wasn't going to teach under him, and she went on to do a lot of other things. What else was she, Harry?
She was one of the founders of the Red Cross.
That's right. So what do you think she was?
She was a nurse.
She was a nurse also. Since she was a nurse, and she was in what war, Harry?
She was in the Civil War.
In the Civil War. Before she founded the Red Cross in 1881, she was a nurse. In battle, or near battles, what's one of the battles that she was at?
Fredericksburg.
Fredericksburg. And then another one that has a monument to her.
Antietam.
Antietam in Maryland, that's right. So she founded the American Red Cross, and in fact, when she was in Europe, she helped out in the 1870s in the Franco-Prussian War, and even had something to do with helping out people in the Johnstown flood, and a little bit later in the Spanish-American War. So she is a very important person. She was here for a few years in New Jersey, but she has accomplished so much, and an important woman that had to do with what New Jersey's all about. Hi, we're now standing in front of the house where Alice Paul was born in 1885, right here in Mount Laurel. And Harry, who was Alice Paul?
So Alice Paul was a woman largely involved in the women's right to vote movement.
Yes, and she was a Quaker, wasn't she?
Yeah.
A member of the Friends, the Hicksite Friends at that time, and she happened to be very, very, very involved in that movement, the women's right to vote movement. She was called a suffragette. She also was a social worker. She went to a Quaker college in Pennsylvania you probably heard of, Swarthmore, and got her bachelor's degree. Later, she got a master's degree and a PhD in sociology from University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. So a very accomplished woman. She spent time in England for a few years as a social worker and as a member of the suffragette movement there. She was in Geneva starting a women's world organization. In Switzerland, she was all over the place. Why, she even had a standoff with Woodrow Wilson, the president, in 1917 with women's nonviolent demonstrations around the White House to convince him to allow women to vote, or at least put his pressure on people to get that to happen. She wrote the Equal Rights Amendment in 1923, and she worked on it on and off for years, and it wasn't until 1972 that a Congress approved it. It never did get ratified by the states, at least yet, but she is such an important voice for women's rights, and we're standing where she was born, and it's right behind us.
And she died, and she's buried in this place called Westfield Friends School in Cinnaminson.
Right, not very far from here in Cinnaminson, at Westfield Friends, at the burial ground there. And she died in Morristown, very close as well. So while a world figure, also a very local figure as well.